almost everybody you watch it, you're just like, they're going on and you can tell they just like, well, we just turn on the mics and we bullshit. It's like, yeah, that sucks. Like that might be fun for you guys. Like I was watching Kevin on Anthony's show today on Compound, and he was like, well, I just do what I think will make like Chad laugh or the other guy laugh. And I'm like, not to tell a 60-year-old man his business or anything, but it's like, as a broadcaster, you can't be looking at the person next to you and going, I'm going to make them laugh. You got to try to visualize the person that's watching you or listening to you and trying to make them laugh. Like,
yeah, it really is about the audience.
Yeah. Like if you're just doing a thing for you and the other person in the room, like you might as well just be jerking yourself off. Like there's too many shows like almost every show on the internet. That's why whenever I find a show where I can tell the host has had like broadcasting experience or is like working on broadcasting chops, it's like that. I really like those shows. I think that's why I like Revenge of the Sis, is because Royce and Mersh have a professional sounding show, like they're presenting a show to you. Whereas like just a lot of podcasts. Rogan was successful in doing like the hangout thing, but not all these people think they're Joe Rogan, and it's just like it doesn't work for most people. It's like watching, I guess, a boxing fan. You would watch Roy Jones Jr. and he would just be so dominant and he'd be so good, but like at the same time, you have to tell young boxers, it's like, don't ever fight like him. Don't ever do that. That's the wrong way to do it. And they're like, yeah, but he did it. And it's like, none of us are him ever. Like he's just special. He's a special guy and he can get away with this shit. Same thing with Joe Rogan. He's just a special dude. Yeah. You got to be prepared and you got to know how to talk to a shitload of people.
And doing a long form type of conversation show like that, it's not for everyone.
Yeah, I watch Rogan for like clips now. Like I just kind of get I get the clips on YouTube and I'm like, oh, that looks. It used to be I'd watch Rogan for the guests, and then I'd be like, well, then he's chop them up into clips, and I'm like, oh, now I can just watch this guest that I like talk about this thing that I like or that I'm interested in, and that's a lot easier. Like boiling down a Rogan episode into like 30, like 3 10-minute clips is a real easy way for me to keep up with that. That's why, like our show, I always put a clip up every day. And, it's usually Lolcows instead of great bits, but it's like, it's the Lolcow stuff that people want to watch. They like watching those clips. So it's like, I know people can't watch a 4.5 hour show every day, but like, here's a 30 or 40-minute clip that, you can be at the gym or you can be doing the dishes or something. And you can consume that easily.
That's part of the reason I kind of actually started to like Redbar, was because he's good in small doses. Those clips of him on YouTube are awesome.
Yeah. I'm trying to watch one now. It's what's a clip somebody just put up? The Steve-O Rogan thing. And it's still like an hour long and it takes him a long fucking time to get to it. And like, I also noticed he's talking a lot about trolls and stuff, which he never used to do. And it's like, oh, I don't want Mike to get concerned about trolls.
His trolls?
I guess he's like, oh, you trolls, you don't know that this show's the best show and this and that. It's like that shit. You never used to bring that shit up before. Like, who cares?
Coping.
Yeah, who gives a shit? Like, obviously it's on your mind. You're annoyed by it. Otherwise you wouldn't bring it up. It's like, there's a lot of things since he came back that I don't know if it's like Chad and John levels of like insecurity because he was gone for so long, but there's a lot of shit he like brings up now where it's just like, he's saying weird shit.
Maybe because all that sickness had to have taken a fucking mental toll on him, because he's not the same person he used to be. And you're right. I hate to admit it because I was so friggin' excited when he came back.
Me too.
But there's something about the new season that, it is a little bit lacking in creativity. Yeah. I mean, the set is amazing.
It is, but it's like so self-indulgent, and it's just like the cult of personality thing kind of took over. And I'm just like, that's not like, this show was kind of like, it was your rebel show, it was this show that was just nothing like any of the other shows. And then it kind of just became about, I think Mike started to get people probably complained during the year off. And then maybe some Scars Club people left during the year off, and you can't blame them. And then you couple that with, if, people have obviously complained since he's come back, and and then he's sick. So I wonder if that stuff hasn't taken a toll on him a little bit.
What about the Sven Stoffel stuff too? That was, your coverage of that was amazing.
Yeah, he didn't talk about that much either. And so maybe that didn't bother him so much. I don't know if that got him.
Sam hasn't killed him yet, though, so I guess maybe he's up in that sense, you know?
Yeah, but Sam Tripoli doesn't seem like the kind of guy who gives up easy either.
Yeah, that's what kind of worries me. It's funny because I actually interviewed a guy who's friends with him. Have you ever heard of Zach Waldman?
No.
I've interviewed him before, but he's great. You would like him. You should get him on your show sometime. He actually used to intern for Stern, and he got fired in '97 for streaking. In my interview, I put the clip of it up, but he is a really fucking funny guy, and he actually knew Stuttering John too. So he's another person who knew him personally and has a lot of stories about him. My friend Zach, he's actually friends with Sam Tripoli. So when I was talking to Zach, trying to get his perspective on the whole stuff, it's like, you know what I mean? I kind of see both of the sides because I understand why Sam would flip the fuck out. You know what I mean? If there's anything making fun of somebody's retarded kids, but it was, but it just was so crazy to me. That was like an example of like the whole internet world where it all becomes kind of too real, you know?
Yeah, it's like I'm of two minds about that. Like, number one, Mike absolutely has every right to do that. If he wants to do that, he should be allowed to do that. But there's also that, and I don't want anything to happen to him legally or even physically, but also like the right of a father to be pissed off. And I don't know, are Sam's kids special needs or no?
They actually are. And I didn't even know that. Dude, when I saw that bit, I thought it was a joke. I thought they were fine. And then I was actually talking to Husey when I had him on my show. I was talking to Husey and he told me that. And I'm like, oh, shit. Okay, that makes sense. Now I understand why he's really mad about it. But it's one of those things when you threaten to kill somebody or you basically go like, I'm going to beat the fuck out of someone. Yeah. You can't say that and then never do it because then you kind of, I know this is a weird circumstance, but it's like you end up kind of looking like you're not you know what I'm saying? You kind of paint yourself into a corner.
I'm a babbling idiot.
Yeah, and like Sam, I think Sam doesn't get to see his children all that often, and I think as a dad, that probably fucks him up really bad to begin with.
Yeah.
So then you throw that on top of it, and he's like, you know, he's probably wants to see his kids more than he does, and then you throw this motherfucker on top of it, and I get it. Like you know, luckily I see my kids, you know, all the time, and so but I get if I didn't see them all the time, like that. Like that would bother me.
It weighs on you. Yeah.
Yeah. It weighs on you. And then you put on top of that, there's special needs. And you put on top of it, some guys saying like, I mean, like I said, I still am a Redbar fan to a degree, but like, even when he did that, I'm like, oh, that's like, I laughed. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, it was hilarious, but
it was funny, but I was like, this is way too, like, I'll laugh at shit that's too far, but I'll also at the same time, like people think you either have to laugh at it or think it went too far. And I'm like, you can do both. Like I laughed at it and I went, that's way over the fucking line.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I do really like about you is that you're a very level-headed guy when it comes to this type of stuff. You can laugh and you can kind of, it seems like you're and not in a bad way, but it seems like you can emotionally distance yourself from the insanity of just this whole internety world of shit that's just going on, you know?
Right. Like, okay, like for example, like we're going to go to DabbleCon. If Chad showed up at DabbleCon and he punched me in the face, would I think that that's over the line? Yeah, we're talking some shit on the internet, but at the same time, I'd also go, I get it. I understand. I don't think I would lose a fight to Chad, but still, I mean, if he came up and he just like clocked me right in the face, I wouldn't be like, what did he do that for? I'd know.
What about Cool Chad when he was in high school? You think you could take Cool Chad?
Oh man, that would be tough. You know, he was probably on the junior varsity football team. He probably got to suit up varsity for the homecoming games. He might have been a little bit more spry back then. He might have been tougher, but like bloated face beer gut Chad now, no, I don't sweat that guy.
I'm assuming that he's going to be persona non grata at DabbleCon. I mean, Chrissy's probably going to be there, right?
Yeah, I think Chrissy's going to be there, Karl, Anthony. Cool. And after, if I don't know if you watch Compound at all or anything, but after Anthony's show today, boy, I don't think Chad's going to be anywhere near anything Anthony related anytime soon. Anthony said some fucking
really
brutal. Oh my God. Yeah. Where are you going to end up putting this up? YouTube?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be putting this on my channel.
I can't say it then. I can't say what he said.
Yeah, I was on Rumble for a while when Stuttering John actually struck my channel. This was a couple of years ago, and that's what led to me kind of doing the whole John coverage. Is I did a couple of episodes on him, like as a WATP fan, and he fucking came after me. So I was on Rumble for a while, but I had bad experiences on there with like uploading stuff in 1080p and having it degraded. You know what I mean? Like it just like
I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of like I'm a little bit of a freak about that. But luckily I got my YouTube channel restored. So I pretty much do everything on YouTube now.
Now, like with John, like is that is that Clamoring Karl guy for sure him, or are people not really sure who that guy is?
I don't think so. I don't think that you can really say with any degree of certainty who these people are. It's kind of tough. If the grammar that he uses is, I know he does the all caps thing, but if he's using good grammar, I could almost guarantee it's not John. But I can tell you, because I've had a lot of interactions with John's people, it's probably a chat moderator or some orbiter that he has.
That guy, that Clamoring Karl guy is fucking wild, by the way. Like if
Yeah.
if that was John, it would kind of make sense. But if it's not John, like that guy goes deep. Like he was.
Well, he's got a hard on for you, huh?
Oh man, he is obsessed with me. Like he's looking into like my divorce from 3 or 4 years ago, and he's all digging up all this stuff, and like it's mostly wrong, but
But it's retarded too. It's like, ooh, this guy had a divorce. It's like a bunch of Yenta shit.
Yeah, it is.
You know
He's
what I
like,
mean?
oh, he's divorced. I'm like, you want to talk about Bob? Like Bob Levy? Like, I
Yeah.
don't think you want to go down the divorce route. Like most of us, we
Right.
tried it early and it wasn't, you change as a person, it doesn't work anymore. And then you figure it out the second time around for most
It's not
people.
a scandal. It's not really even embarrassing.
No.
It's very common nowadays. And it's like, why, if you're a man talking about another man's love life, like, why do you care about this stuff?
Yeah. And then there's some other stuff he got wrong, but it's like, I'm not going to go on Twitter or my show and address what this guy got wrong. Cause like that conversation is nobody's fucking business anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, he's like, oh, he left his first wife when she was pregnant. I'm like, no, that's not. But I also don't want to get into the conversation of like how that all went down because A, who gives a shit? B, I think with my radio audience, we discussed it 4 or 5 years ago. And also it's like, it's not that interesting of a story, but like you whenever you have this impulse as a broadcaster, when someone gets something wrong, you're like, oh, I got to correct it. And you're like, no, sometimes you can just go, look, people get to say what they want to say. That's part of the deal.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty level-headed way to look at it. I was going to ask you, so one question about being a radio personality, is there more, I'm guessing more with the podcast world, but is there more drama working in radio or working like as a podcaster?
No, radio's so boring now. Like it's so dead. My influences were Stern and Opie and Anthony. And, watching that show, listening and watching those shows, I went, oh my God, because they're the shows people think that, oh my God, you just rip them off. No, those are the shows people like me always wanted to do when we were on the radio. We just didn't know people could do them. So when you found these guys, that was your outlet. You're like, holy shit, this is exactly the kind of show I want to be doing. These guys are doing it. Holy shit, I want it. That's exactly, kind of the idea I had. As you kind of use them as like your North Star, and you go, and then you do put your own spin on it and you do it that way. If you have a problem with somebody on another station, or you have a problem with someone in the area that you broadcast in, you go on the air and you just rip them to shreds and you fuck with them and all that stuff. And problem with radio is like everyone else is trained in the business to not get into all that. Like, no, we got to play we got to hit our breaks, and we got to do our stop sets, and we got to get to the music and this and that. So no, it was so boring on radio because I'm like sitting here picking fights and nobody wants to fight back. And you're just like, well, this is no fun because like you don't mean it. Like you're just talking shit like we do about Chad, like we do about Opie, John, all these other people. It's like I find them entertaining and I want to tell jokes about them. So you use them for that. Same thing with radio, only on YouTube, people will engage you because it's fun. On radio, people are like, oh, no, we have to do it this way. And it's a failed business and they do everything wrong. So you go to the internet and it's just more wide open. It's more fun. Radio, they couldn't pay me enough to go back to radio.
Yeah, I bet. Especially now, it's so fucking milquetoast and predictable. It's like they could just have a robot friggin' spin record. You know what I mean? It really does seem like it's automated at this point.
Yeah, we've been gone for 2 years now, and it's gotten so much worse in those 2 years. I mean, I don't think I've turned on a radio outside of a sporting event that I wasn't near a TV for in that 2 years since I left. And when I go to the gym or something and it's on, you're just like, oh, like in the age of phones and people having billions of options at their fingertips at any time, who's voluntarily turning this shit on?
Got to be people over 75 only.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting to be about that age. Yeah, like maybe 60 and over, but like every year further, like that age goes up and up. I can't imagine if you're 22, 25, and you're hip to shit and you know what's going on and you're like totally 100% balls deep into pop culture, I can't imagine you're turning on a radio. Like for me, it used to be like, oh, maybe I'll listen to takes on the Vikings game or something like that. Now, like 10 minutes after the game, you go to YouTube and there's hundreds of people's videos and takes on the Vikings game from the day. So you don't need it anymore.
Even talk radio, it's just gotten so terrible now too.
Yeah. And like the political stuff is just, it's the worst episode of pro wrestling ever. Cause you know what everyone's going to say and what everyone's going to do before they even say it or do it, because they all work for a corporation, so they can only stay within these lines, you know? So they're not going to go further than this to the left, and they're not going to go further than this to the right. So that's not that interesting. I mean, once in a while, Tucker will go way the fuck out there, but yeah, most of the stuff that's really going to get your blood pumping is online.
Yeah, that's true. And people can participate too, which is one of the reasons to talk about WATP for a second. I think Karl has really used the audience participation factor to his benefit to promoting WATP.
Yeah, he does a really good job with that. That show grew out of nothing. You know, I always get kind of pissed on behalf of Karl when someone like Chad goes like, oh, he just sucked Anthony's dick and that's how he got big. And I'm like, no, because I was a fan when Anthony started taking notice of that show. And that show had already gotten a really big following, and Anthony kind of jumped on halfway through. I mean, it gave him a boost, don't get me wrong.
Absolutely, yeah.
But like Karl's earned all that. Like that's just a really fun show, and people go, oh, it's a ripoff of Jocktober. I fucking love Jocktober. It's like a franchise. I want it to exist. Like the Tonight Show, when Jay Leno took it over, I mean, Johnny Carson wasn't doing it anymore. Somebody has to keep that franchise going. So Anthony's not doing Jocktober. Opie's not doing Jocktober. They're not going to be around forever. Let this guy pick up the mantle and do a Jocktober type show. And it's not like reaction content is an Opie and Anthony copyright. Like that's most of the internet, most of news, most of entertainment now is reacting to stuff.
And there's more shitty content to make fun of out there than ever before. Could you imagine if Opie and Anthony were able to time travel to 2022 and do a show back in like 2013? You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's just, there's so much crazy content out there, and it's just waiting to be friggin' reacted to, you know?
Yeah, they'd have to take a time machine though, because if they would have had to make it from 14 to 22, they'd have killed each other by now.
Yeah.
It was amazing to find out, because you kind of got the vibe from the couple of fights they'd done over the years. You'd be like, these two, you know, they're kind of, Penn Jillette said once about Penn and Teller, it's like, you know, we never became super close friends who hang out all the time. We just thought, if we're just two guys who own a dry cleaning business together, we'll always get along. You know, we give ourselves plenty of space. But you got that vibe that Opie and Anthony started as friends. Then they tried to do the guys running a dry cleaning business together, and it just, you could tell they both held grudges, you know, whether fair or unfair. And you kind of get the vibe as a listener from time to time, like, these two aren't, not only they're not on the same page, but like there's something about these two. Maybe you didn't say they hated each other, but you were like, they definitely don't enjoy each other's company for long. So Anthony would have stayed, he said before, he would have stayed and done that show forever. But I think Opie's stupidity and delusions of grandeur would have got the better of him, and he would have tried to break that show up. So I that show maybe had another 2 or 3 years left in it because of that.
Yeah. And it's a shame though, because I mean, I was sort of late to the party to appreciating them. Like, I think it was around like 2012 that I started listening to Opie and Anthony, but then I went back in time, like with Stern, because I wasn't really a big Stern fan, but you can always rediscover those clips later on. And like a lot of that stuff is still very interesting. Were you afraid when you knew you were going to have to go to podcasting, when you left radio? Were you worried? Were you scared of just, you know, it not being familiar to you? Or do you think you transitioned well?
Both. I was fucking terrified when we started, because we'd had fans tell us, because we'd get in trouble on radio, like just because they don't let you do much. And we did a balls out 4.5-hour talk show and, you know, 15 minutes of commercials, but that was it. The rest of it was us. And, you know, every time they'd shut something we wanted to do down, or they told us we couldn't do something and we did it anyway and we get in trouble, the fans would be like, fuck this, go to the internet. Because we were simulcasting on Twitch. That was my idea. That was my account. It was a way to
smart.
it was a way to get our guys a little more money, make a little more money for the show, you know, because radio doesn't pay shit. I ended up making a decent living because of, selling. I wanted to sell my own show because I hated salespeople in radio. I couldn't stand them because they would sell anything that wasn't nailed down. They'd make you pitch products you don't believe in. So I went, pay me less so I can get on the air. Let me go and pick my advertisers so I can do live reads and promote people that I like and that I want to tell my audience about, so they'll be more successful. And not only that, I didn't like the idea of these salespeople making all this money off my ratings, taking 20% of the money while I get dick. So I'm like, oh no, I want 20% of my show's success. It's like betting on yourself.
Was that a lot of pressure for you?
Yeah, that part really fucking sucked, because if one business that you grabbed 3 months ago went on a trial period and then they said, nah, we're out. Now it's like, oh shit, my budget takes a hit. Now I got to go try and replace that. And then that's time you're not spending on the show. And that part really, really sucked. But I was terrified though, because our audience kept saying, go to the internet, we'll support it. Go to the internet, we'll support it. And I'm like, dude, this is St. Cloud, Minnesota. And even though we had massive numbers, it's still St. Cloud. We had maybe 10, 12,000 people listening to us on a monthly, weekly basis. Like, we probably had 10 or 12,000 different individual audience members. And so I was like, I don't know, man, we'd have to take like 2,000 of you with us. It'd be this much a person. And obviously we don't force people to pay for our show. So it would have to be a free will offering to support it that way. And I decided to bring everybody with me and bring our team with and all that stuff. So when we got suspended, I knew we'd be back. Because, and for people who don't know, we busted the balls of this Iowa radio station, and the woman of the Guy Girl show tried to make it like cut out all the parts where we made fun of her and tried to make it look like we were just doing this misogynist thing. It's like, no, we were saying horrible shit about the whole station, everybody on it, having fun, laughing about it, going, we're so stupid, blah, blah, blah. They chopped like a 2-hour thing into like 6 minutes and made it sound like I'm a bleeding toothed madman, and, the station wasn't used to getting that many phone calls, and I knew we were going to get suspended, and I knew things were going to have to change. I didn't know how much. When they called me and they said, we want your Facebook, we want your Twitter, we want your Twitch, we want all of that. I couldn't let them take the Twitch because I was giving that to the staff, and so they could, make some decent money doing the show.
Do you mean they wanted you to shut it down, or they wanted to control it and tell you what you could and couldn't post?
My opinion is both. I think my opinion is they offered for us to come back. They suspended us for a Thursday, Friday. And they said, you can come back Monday if you do all this. And I hung up the phone because I didn't want to make a rash decision. But I went, they're going to take all those things. They're going to burn them down the next time this happens, take away my tens of thousands of people I can connect with. If I want to do something else, they're going to burn all that down, and then they're going to fire me if this ever happens again. So I was like, I can't do that. I can't lose Twitch, because that's what we would launch on. And we did launch on that at first, if we're going to take this thing somewhere else. So I talked to April, who we weren't married at the time, but like I was in a full blown panic. Like I'm not a guy with any anxiety. I'm not a guy who's ever had panic attacks. That was like the closest I think I've ever gotten to a panic attack.
Well, that's your livelihood. That's your brand, being taken from you potentially. Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah. And the day these conversations were happening, like the kids were young enough, they weren't at school yet. So they're at home. And I'm like, I'm shaking and about to lose my shit. And I don't want to do that in front of the kids. So I go to April, I go, I got to go upstairs. I got to go upstairs for a second. And I made it upstairs. I closed the door, lost my shit. And she came upstairs and she goes, I'm like, I have to go online. I can't go back. I can't give them all this control. The whole point of our show is that we control it. We're this different kind of show. And I go, I'm going to have to go online. And I'm panicking about it because I go, this is it. This is the end. And she goes, no, we'll make this work. You have a very loyal audience. They'll support it. They will keep this thing going. And they have for 2 years. And that audience has grown a whole bunch now. When we were on the radio, it was 10 to 12,000 different people every month. And now it's like between 35 and 45 on YouTube. And that's fucking great. It goes up every month. I'm really excited about that. But nice. They've supported it, and it just keeps going up and up from here. So it was, but I was in a sheer panic until the first day, Black Friday of 2020 was the first day we launched on Twitch, solely on Twitch. and the audience was just throwing support at us in droves, like morally and financially. And we're like, holy shit, this thing's going to work. And there, like, I brought all my staff with me, and we were able to do that because so many of our local advertisers came with us. But like, as our audience grew and it wasn't a Minnesota audience anymore, a lot of those local advertisers went, hey, great to see you on your feet. I'm glad you guys are doing well. We're going to take off now because we just wanted to see this thing work. And, you're obviously doing more of a nationwide thing than a St. Cloud, Minnesota thing. See you later. So we've kind of had to adjust to that stuff, but luckily the audience has grown enough where, we've been able to do it the way we are. But yeah, I was really terrified. The only cool thing about it was when I told the station that I was leaving, they were like, oh, you're just going to abandon us like that? I'm like, you just threatened to take all my shit from me.
Yeah,
and they're like,
fuck them.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, they go, oh, well, what are you going to do? You're not going to you can't call it steel toe. And I'm like, the fuck I can't. And I showed them, we have it hanging up on the wall here. The owner of the station lied to me and said that they owned the name Steel Toe. And I called his bluff. I went and checked online. They didn't. So I bought it. Like 6
nice.
months, yeah, like 6 months before I got, I had to, well, I keep wanting to say fired. Before I quit, I was kind of forced my hand, but I quit. I bought the trademark to the show and I took a picture of it. I sent it to him. I go, the fuck, I can't use the name. And they never wrote me back again.
That's awesome. That's a good story.
They shorted me $5,000 on commission that they still owe me. But I would have to pay a lawyer to do that. And it's not worth I'd pay $4,000 to get $5,000 and it's just not worth it.
A lot of the times it's just a lost cause with this kind of shit. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wrote it off
That
so
sucks.
I could be done with them. Yeah. They had a deal with me. They said, well, you can't run us down. You can't talk shit about us. I go, yes, I can, but I'll make you a deal. If you pay me the commissions you owe me, which was the $5,000, I won't disparage you. And then they sent me this bullshit thing in the mail where they took accounts from like 2017, like 3 years ago. And they go, well, we never collected on these, so we're not going to pay out on them. And they found like $5,120 in non-payments. And in Minnesota, that's illegal. Like, that's against the law.
It's scummy too. It's unethical.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
but they were ass hurt that we left and they pulled that last move. And I kind of chuckled and I went, oh, now I get to shit on them whenever I want.
Yeah.
So that's worth so I told them, I go, I'm just going to take this $5,000 out of your ass. Like, that's all that's going to happen. While you're upgrading, I'm just scrolling through Twitter and seeing all the terrible fucking pictures I'm being sent by people.
Dude, what was I gonna say? I was listening to WATP, the Chad Zumock episode today.
Yeah, I the hour and 40-minute one.
Yeah, no, it was awesome, and I feel bad because I haven't had a chance to get caught up with that show, but
Right.
it's fucking hilarious.
It's a very good show, and like Karl's not like this. He's not like this big tough guy. I'm gonna fuck you up. He's just this dorky guy who's making fun of people, and I think that makes it even more effective because it's like if these shows take it personally, like they just want to wring his little neck and they can't. And I kind of like that. I would much rather annoy a target than like be mean to them. Like I rather than get angry at them, I'd rather be obnoxious. I just find that to be way more fun because like you look at Chad. Being obnoxious just puts people on tilt so much. And then when they start yelling and getting mad, you just giggle more. And it's very fun and childish and liberating. It's great.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it would be like to be on Karl's radar if I were one of his Lolcows. Like, it's like imagining what it would be like to be up on Redbar's screen.
Yeah, but the Redbar
I'd be terrified.
I got to tell you, like Redbar mentioned us in his BBG and we shit on him for doing that. And he brought us up like very low key on 2 of his episodes. And as a Redbar fan, I went, well, here's what you don't do. You don't try to kiss his ass and tell him how great he is. I go, what you got to do is you just got to go over the top and hammer the fucking shit out of him. And then hopefully that backs him off. Like you probably won't beat him, but you can get him to ignore you and leave you alone. And that's kind of what happened with us. We did the Sven thing because he like kind of passively mentioned us. And I went, it's kind of like a punk test. Redbar, kind of shitting on you a little bit. You get a punk test and it's like, okay, it's like a prison yard. If I let this guy take my lunch from me and I don't do anything, everyone's going to see that and he's never going to stop. But if I just am irrational and I just fire at the guy with both fucking barrels, maybe that'll make him go, I got better things to do than fuck around with this guy. And I think that might have been what our fucking 2-hour Sven Stoffels episode might have been, because I haven't heard a peep from Redbar since then.
That's funny. Yeah, it's funny because, Karl actually did cover Redbar on an episode. You could tell Redbar was kind of butthurt about it because he fired back. But then, yeah, like the same thing you said, where it was like he kind of responded because he knew he had to. But then I don't think he talked about Karl since.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't really bring up Karl. And I think.
And he's aware of Karl. He absolutely knows who Karl is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's he's covered Chrissy on Karl's show. And so he's very familiar with who Karl is. And he just doesn't bring him up. And I like to pride our show on the fact that the one thing that happens when we get in these kind of beefs is that we always remember to be annoying before anything else. Like if you start getting mad or you start trying to, that's what I say, like that Clarmoring Karl guy, like don't answer their criticisms, just be obnoxious. Like if you put yourself on the defensive, you're fucked. But if you just go, oh, that's what you said. I always say when someone's shitting on you, just give them everything they said. Just say, all right, fine. That's true. Here's what I think of you. And then you be obnoxious and over the top and funny and all that stuff. And because then at least that way you guarantee yourself a draw, worst case scenario.
I pretty much covered the radio stuff that I wanted to ask you. I was going to ask you some Minnesota questions, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Because I'm really interested in U.S. geography. I've never been to Minnesota before. I've been to, I think, 29 states, but I would eventually like to get to all the 50 states. So I was going to ask you, as someone from Minnesota, are you a fan of the Fargo films and TV shows, or
yes?
Does this really? So the stereotypical depiction of Minnesota doesn't piss you off?
Some of the accents are a little heavy-handed, but like some of them, those people 1000% exist. Like
really?
I would say Gene Lundergaard 1000% is a lot of Minnesota like wives. Wade that's an old school like Norwegian Minnesotan.
No Gene, no money.
Yeah. The whole like that whole meeting in the office about the finder's fee, like that.
I want FDIC. Sorry.
Yeah. I don't see anything like that here.
I think he's the inspiration for Carl Pewterschmidt on Family Guy.
Maybe, yeah.
You think so? Yeah.
If I wanted a loan, I'd go to Midwest Federal, talk to old Bill Deal. Margie's over the top. Jerry Lundergaard is over the top. But yeah, a lot of that, like the two prostitutes who were like, oh yeah, he was real funny looking. Like that, those are real Minnesota people. Those people exist.
Even still today?
Yeah. The most Minnesota person, like the most stereotypical Minnesota person in that movie who everyone in Minnesota absolutely knows at least one of these people is the old man pushing water in his driveway. The guy who tells the cop the story of like, yeah, he said he was going crazy up there by the lake.
That guy. Yeah. He was funny.
That guy's real.
That guy was funny as fuck too. He might've been the funniest guy. One of the funniest people in that movie. That's
the most quotable part of that movie for me is where he goes, he said the last person who thought he was a jerk is dead now, and I don't mean from old age. And I don't say nothing. And he says, well, what do you think about that? And I said, that don't sound like too good of a deal for him. And I'm like, that's how that guy in Minnesota tells that story to anybody. Like that's right. 100% a real guy. So no, I like Fargo. They have to exaggerate. It's a movie, but it's pretty like that and grumpy old men. Like all those guys exist.
What about the TV shows of Fargo? The first season was fucking amazing.
I never got into the TV show. I will someday. I'll get into Fargo TV show, but like I got on such a Vince Gilligan kick in the last couple of years. Like I watched Breaking Bad twice, I watched all of Better Call Saul. And so like I
love Better Call Saul. They really, I did not expect it to be as good as it was.
It was amazing how how on both of those universes shows, like they just completely stuck the landing on the finale. That's hard to do once, let alone twice. Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen all of The Sopranos. I think I stuck myself somewhere around season 4. It's a good show. I just never jumped back in. But like, I know what happens in the finale. I've seen the last scene. I'm like that. I don't mind spoilers and stuff. For me, it's more like the storytelling leading up to. Like, I don't mind knowing what's going to happen. And like that finale is, you know, I know people debate it, but I think it's a really, really good finale. And even without seeing the show, I know exactly what happened. To me, it's like that scene in Casino where De Niro comes in and James Woods and Sharon Stone are in the booth. And James Woods' character sees all of De Niro's guys like standing by the doors. And he's like, well, I'm fucked. And watching The Sopranos, watching all those people walk in at the end, I'm like, oh, they're fucked.
The last seasons of that show were really good, but it became darker and darker as the seasons went on. But season 4 was a really good one. I think that's probably my favorite season of all.
I think I'm on like
maybe 3.
The aftermath. Cover your ears, guys, if you don't want to hear this. The aftermath of Tony killing Ralph.
Oh yeah, Pyomai.
Yeah, I'm in the aftermath of that. I think I'm in like 1 or 2 episodes after the actual killing, and like Chris falling into heroin and his chick being, you know, harassed by the authorities and all that. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Breaking Bad's the only show that you could ever argue. Maybe, I know a lot of people say The Wire, but I feel it's like those 3 shows. I feel like very few shows come close to doing what they did for television.
I thought like storytelling wise, Game of Thrones had a chance and they ate it. Like they just blew it so bad in like the last 3 seasons. People don't want to say this, but when you go back and look, half of Game of Thrones is not good. Like I
never saw it personally, but
okay. The first half of Game of Thrones is some of the best long form storytelling in television history. And then like the last 3.5 seasons, just absolute shit. Like, but yeah, I think Breaking Bad is so good start to finish. Like the argument you could make for Better Call Saul is the first season and a half is really slow, but
I think the first 3 seasons are kind of slow.
Okay, honestly. Yeah, until like Chuck kills himself. Like it's pretty slow.
Then it gets really good though. Once it gets to like season 4, season 5 are fire.
Let's be very honest. Once Lalo comes in,
oh yeah,
it's an awesome show.
He might be one of the best characters in the whole Breaking Bad universe. So for him to come in late was kind of unexpected.
It would have been really great to see him like in the main show, like to see him in Breaking Bad. That's too bad that character had to go. Yeah. But I would have, it would have been cooler for me if like the assassin twins died in Better Call Saul and we get Lalo in Breaking Bad. That would have been really cool. But
Lalo versus Walt.
Yeah. Like
that would have been fucked up. Yeah.
I don't know. Cool. I don't know who wins that one.
Another thing I was going to ask you is somebody from Minnesota. Do people from Minnesota consider Jesse Ventura to be kind of an embarrassment? His interview on Opie and Anthony was what made me an Opie and Anthony fan.
Jesse Ventura did a good job as governor while embarrassing himself a lot. Like the things he did and the things he got done were really, really good. He, as like a character, could be really embarrassing. Like he would say dumb shit. Here's what I've always said about Jesse Ventura. When they asked him about the issues and what he wanted to do, and I was like, what are we talking? 99, he was sworn in. So I was like 12 or 13. But like, I knew enough back then. Like I was kind of a dork. And he, like when he would talk about the stuff he wants to do, he sounded really good. Like that was stuff people wanted. He was kind of the people's governor. But the problem Jesse had is he would answer every fucking question he was asked. Jesse had never learned the phrase, that question has nothing to do with my job. I'm not answering it. Like he was almost like Will Ferrell's character in Austin Powers, where if you asked if you asked him a question a certain amount of times, he had to answer. He couldn't help it. Like one of the first controversies he got into as governor, and this has nothing to do with your job. I asked him about religion. And he goes, well, I think religion is a crutch for weak-minded people. Now, this is like
a good impression, by the way, dude. Nice.
Well, look, people are like, oh, would you get your impression from Anthony? I'm like, fuck no. That guy was the governor since I was in middle school. I've been doing a Jesse Ventura impression since that guy was elected. Like, people have added on their own Jesse Ventura impressions through the years. But no, I was doing that one to crack people up in middle school, for God's sake. You go to your friend's house and you crack up their parents with a Jesse Ventura impression. But he would say like, religion is for weak-minded people. And then people, it's a Lutheran Norwegian state.
Right.
And like immediately they're like, well, fuck this guy. And he did such a good job. Like we had a surplus, like we had all these programs in place that were good. He was trimming like government redundancy. He did really well, but like he said so much stupid shit. And like then he like special guest refereed SummerSlam, and that just wasn't done back then. And they thought it was embarrassing. And his approval rate, he likes to say, oh, if I would have ran again, I would have won because my approval rating was 38%. And in a 3-way race, that's enough to win. And it's like, yeah, I get it. But I think he kind of wore out his welcome. He did a good job and he just didn't run for a second term. He goes, I said I was going to do 4 years and then go back to the private sector. And he did. And then everyone thought that him winning as a third party and getting the Independence Party in Minnesota major party status, it was like, Minnesota is going to be this great example to the rest of the country that you can have another party. And within like 2 elections, the Independence Party fell below 5% and they were minor party again. And now we're just back to Republicans and Democrats like every other place.
Yeah, the unit party.
Yeah, where it's just like it's differentiations on a theme, basically.
Yeah. I did want to ask you one more Minnesota question.
One more about Minnesota.
As someone who's never been to Minnesota, if I were to go to Minnesota, what would be like a quintessentially Minnesota meal to eat other than maybe lutefisk?
Yeah, I never did lutefisk. I feel like that's an old people thing, the lutefisk thing.
I saw it in an episode of King of the Hill, but I've never had it. Yeah.
Something that's uniquely Minnesota or something that's really big in Minnesota. I guess we're credited with inventing the Juicy Lucy, like the burger that's got the cheese and stuff stuffed into it.
Oh, that sounds fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's one of our things. And tater tot hot dish is another one of our things. It's
Was it like a casserole?
Yeah, you pack like a casserole with like ground beef and peas and corn, and you make like a cream of chicken soup kind of sauce with it, and then you top the whole thing with tater tots and you put it in the oven. And
all right, man, that sounds good.
Pretty fucking good. So I would say those two things. We're credited with the Juicy Lucy and the tater tot hot dish, I think, is ours. Like that old school, like German and Norwegian shit. People my age don't really get into that stuff.
Yeah. It's funny because when I went to Ohio, I tried Skyline chili. I don't know if you've ever been to Ohio or if you've ever had Cincinnati style chili. It's like spaghetti. It's like chili with spaghetti, but it's this dark, like chocolatey. It's good, but it's different. It's try to keep an open mind, but it's like a cinnamony, dark, sweet kind of like savory, spicy kind of chili, but it's got spaghetti on top. And then like a shitload, like a pound of that orange shredded cheese.
Those people are fucking animals.
It's good though. It's really good. You won't like yourself, but it's good. It's a slob kind of meal, but
I'll to quote Chrissy Mayer, I'll dabble in making chili from time to time. Like I like making different chili recipes and gumbo recipes once in a while. And I think my favorite one, and I know this isn't like a very uncommon thing, but like that Boilermaker chili that the Purdue fans make for their tailgates and stuff, that stuff is fucking great.
I used to make a good chili that was like I was describing, like I'd use cinnamon, I'd use like 5 spice. It was very like not nutmeg, but it had like a almost it's hard to describe. It had almost like a Christmassy spice, like a winter spice kind of a flavor to it, but it was almost kind of like the Skyline chili, but I used to love making that. So right now it seems like you're feuding with some of the other prominent members of the Lolcow community from this, our kind of corner of the internet.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how that started?
Well, the John one started, we kind of stumbled onto these communities, honestly. We weren't one of these people like, oh, I see all these people shitting on this guy, let's jump on. We didn't know these communities existed until we shit on the guy one time. So like, we weren't growing. Well, I mean, we were growing, but not like at the rate we are now when we first came to YouTube back in May. And I would go on like our cringe and these different Reddit places as part of my show prep. And Stuttering John was in there once, and he was talking about how Sacha Baron Cohen owes him a thank you for the Borat character because his red carpet interviews are like what Borat does. So he was ranting and raving about that on his podcast. I made fun of him. I put a video up there, and we weren't doing 1,000 views on our clips and stuff back then. Like we were like, now it's like 2,000-3,000 views, pretty respectable.
Yeah.
But that was like the first one that clipped over 1,000. And I was like, what the fuck? And then all of a sudden I'm like, people are tweeting me and like, oh, have you, and I knew about who are these podcasts. I knew Karl was going through it with John, but I didn't think there was this whole world out there. And we had kind of jumped in when that whole thing just before it took off. So we did that John story, and then everything John related went nuts. So we were kind of in there in a way that like we weren't the first to do it, but we also, they couldn't accuse us of like jumping on and piling on because we got in just before the boom hit. But it wasn't intentional. We found a John clip. I was a Howard Stern fan growing up. We did it. People watched it. So I go, well, we'll check in on John every once in a while and we'll do that. But then like everyone started doing it. And then God blessed us with two people a few months ago that allowed us to completely abandon John and not talk about him anymore. Because in my opinion,
it gets exhausting. The guy's exhausting.
And here's what it is. I want to get out of Shuli, Levy, and Karl's way because like they do it so well. We were just on the Blunder Years on the Uncle Rico show this week.
Nice. Yeah, I saw some of that. That was great. I've
never laughed harder doing a show. It was so fucking funny. And it made me glad that we stopped doing John stuff because they do it so well and Karl does a great job. So one day we're in the middle of doing John stuff and I catch this video of Chad Zumock, who I'd never heard of before. Well, no, I'd scratch that. I had heard of him because like 8 or 9 months earlier, Anthony was making fun of him for the credit card theft stuff. But nobody was really making fun of Chad yet. And we did a video on Chad saying he was going to jump in on the Stuttering John stuff. And I'm like, I called it out on our show. I'm like, fuck this guy. He's just he's just jumping on so he can get some heat from something. And we called it out. And then Karl called it out after. And that's how I got to know like Chrissy Mayer and Frank Pellegrino. Frank Pellegrino sent me a DM and goes, holy shit, dude, I got to credit you with kicking off the Chad stuff. And that felt really awesome. So Chad kind of became our guy. Like Karl and I kind of share custody of Chad Zumock a little bit. But anytime
you argue over like, okay, you're going to take him more. No, you're going to get full custody. No, you're going to get full custody.
Anytime I see a WATP clip and it's like a day before we were about to play a Zumock clip, I'll text Karl. I'll be like, God, fuck you. Now I got to find something else for our last 30 minutes tomorrow. Cause I'm not going to take something he just did and risk the chance of fucking it up or not doing as good a job. So it's like, we jumped on Chad and then we jumped on that Tony Michaels guy. Because I saw him and I went, oh, this guy's a fucking creep.
And I want to ask you about some of the Tony Michaels stuff too.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, those were the two guys that allowed us to leave John alone completely. And then we check in with Opie every once in a while because he's a train wreck. And I will say this. I don't want anyone to think that we dislike Brendan Shaub. I find Brendan Shaub amusing. And I mean that in the most uninvolved, personal way possible. Like, I don't have a personal opinion on Brendan Shaub. I watch him and I just go, what a big goof. And like, I couldn't have less of a personal interest in Brendan Shaub or the direction of his career. The guy is accidentally entertaining all the time.
What do you think about his lawsuit against Kyle?
That part, that pisses me off, but I get it. I understand it because he had to. I think what Kyle did was fair use. I think what Kyle did I think that whole thing should be struck down. But at the same time, like, he played a clip of Brendan Shaub clearly handing some strange woman like a phone number or a hotel room or something. Like, it was something really like we've all interacted with women before, and that didn't look like a business interaction. That looked like something very personal. And he's married and he has children. And you've got to do something about that. Like, if you let that go, there's going to be problems at home. So he had to do something, but it's not going to go well for him because shouldn't
he be suing him for defamation, not copyright though? Like, the lawsuit doesn't seem like it makes sense.
But you can't really sue him for defamation because Kyle can say, well, prove because then
that the burden's on you.
Yeah, if you sue for defamation, Brendan then has to say what he was doing with that woman. So you don't
discovery. Yeah.
You gotta, because if you're gonna sue someone for defamation, you have to prove they're lying. You have to provide the evidence that shows that they're full of shit, and that person has to show the evidence that what they said is true. It's like a dual burden of proof thing. So if I say, that's why you never say things like this guy's a murderer or this guy's a pedophile unless you have a conviction. Instead, you go, look, I'm looking at the facts of this case. And in my
allegedly,
in my opinion, it looks like this guy might be guilty. Like, that's not actionable because you can say, Your Honor, that was just my opinion. I've been watching this thing. That's my analysis. If you go, this guy's a murderer, and then he gets acquitted, well, we're learning that in the Kyle Rittenhouse thing. You're fucked.
Yeah.
If a guy's on trial and you call him a murderer and he gets acquitted, there's no hiding from that. You're screwed.
Yeah, it's kind of like that Nick Sandman guy. How much money did he get from I
Quarter
forget what that
billion.
was. That was defamation or character assassination.
Yeah.
And he got a
He
lot
got-
of fucking money out of that.
I think he
suit.
got $250 million.
I can only imagine how much Rittenhouse will get eventually. It'll take him years to get that, but
Unless they just settle and they just write up, like everybody cuts him a check, which,
it'd probably be in everybody's best interest to settle that out.
yeah, like he doesn't want to be bogged down by that forever. Like just he'll look, you settle for like $100 million all told, and you'll be fine.
That's enough. You don't need any more than that. Yeah, no, I agree. That's what I would do. I would take.
I always
fucking
say
money.
anything more than 80 million is gravy.
I know, right? I was going to ask you about the Tony Michaels stuff. So I didn't know that much about Tony Michaels. I first heard about him when I went to the Nashville show. Karl had played some clips of him laughing at John and his DC trip. And at first, when I first saw Tony Michaels, I just thought, oh, he seems like a normal dude. He's laughing at John. You know what I mean? I got that kind of vibe off of him where I'm like, oh, he seems all right. And then the more I heard about this guy, the more I was like, holy shit. And the whatever it is, the K2 stuff, I thought all of that was a joke.
Yeah. Well, I found Tony Michaels through the John thing. Again, like Chad and Tony were the two guys who allowed me to like just exit the whole Stuttering John thing while it was, way up here. And Tony was on with John. And I think around this time we had kind of become friends with Chrissy and Frank, and he was going really hard on Chrissy for like the January 6th stuff. And I was just kind of making fun of him. And, the fact that he tries so hard to be edgy, and he's one of these guys who's kind of lame. So he shouts fuck, and that's supposed to replace any actual charisma or edge.
It's like a 14-year-old.
Yeah, he's just really like one of these guys who's abrasive for no reason. Like there's no reason to be abrasive, yet he's doing it. And so we just kind of made fun of him and goofed on him. And the bridge between that and then finding out about the K2 and the building stuff and all of that,
that got dark quick.
Yeah, it got funny dark.
Because he's such a dork. And then it was just like, I didn't expect that from him at all.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that bridged us from the Chrissy stuff to that was he was the first guy to respond to us. Like he was the first guy to bring us up and call us shitheads and assholes. And I've been broadcasting long enough to know that once the guy you're making fun of calls you a shithead or an asshole, that's that moment where you jerk the fishing rod and you're like, I landed him.
Yeah.
I got him. We got him, boys. Like the minute they go on tilt, you're like, yes, this is going to be so much fun. But then, like you said, it got so dark with the K2 shit and all that. He kind of, and then we got through all the drive-through videos, those funny drive-through videos.
Yes! I got chicken strips instead of a cheeseburger and I didn't even remember.
All right, guys, I'm about halfway through the meal. Gonna start on the ice cream here soon. I'll let you know how that goes.
Are you fucking retarded?
Yeah.
That then he kind of like shut down anything that wasn't his political stuff. And his political stuff is so boring that I don't want to make fun of it. So Tony Michaels to me is like he's a spent fuel rod, if you will.
How did you find out about all that stuff with his background? Like who did the deep dive into him?
I don't want to miscredit because like that community, I love those guys, man. But if you got to get your bibliography.
But it was one of the dabblers, though. It was obviously one of those.
To me, the guys that I got it from, Muttering Jay, Stut Joe Depot, and Jimmy Dabbles.
Okay.
Those were the three people I got my stuff from. And if I'm forgetting anyone, throw rocks at my head, buried neck deep in sand. I'm sorry. But those were the three guys I remember getting stuff from.
Is Stut Joe Depot that Mike Morse guy from fucking Uncle Rico?
I don't know. I don't know who Stut Joe Depot is. I know Mike Morse is Mike Morse on Twitter.
Was he a radio personality in Boston by any chance? Because I think I remember his name.
I don't know.
I'm from Boston.
I wish I knew more about Mike because like I just met him doing the Uncle Rico show, and he's a really funny, nice guy. So
he runs that show, right? He's like the producer, sort of. Okay.
Well, they have another producer that was on before we went on the air, but yeah, I think Mike does a lot of the organizational stuff.
Oh, okay. I was actually planning on reaching out to Shuli next and see if maybe I could get him on for an interview.
Very, very nice guy. He'll do it.
He's awesome. I actually met him at the Nashville show. He was super nice.
Him and Bob are both remarkably nice guys. I like Bob, like the amount of like nice things Bob has to say about our show is just ridiculous. Like he'll text once in a while. Like he texted this morning and he goes, send me the link to your show. I do a terrible Bob Levy, but he's like, send me a link. I didn't know he meant to the show, so I didn't send anything until I got off the air. And he's like, oh no, I just meant to the show. I would have chimed in. I was like, oh fuck.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
yeah, from now on, when you say send me the link, I'll bring you on. Bob's a really funny guy. Yeah, contact Shuli.
Bob's great.
He'll absolutely do it. He'll do
Yeah,
anything.
absolutely. I was gonna ask you so about the feuds. So I was watching the shit with Elisa Jordana. I gotta say, I was a fan of her, and I do like her. I find her likable, but this whole thing with the not being able to disavow people in her community who it sounds almost certain, and you could maybe say there's a little bit of doubt. Maybe somebody was like, "Oh yeah, I had him swatted," but that's not something you should ever say. I think he did probably have you swatted.
I look, the stuff I have that the authorities have now, there's no doubt. And then the other guy, like this guy made it look like this other guy did it, and that guy's now working with us and with the authorities. Like between his stuff he has this guy's been harassing this dude for years. And like the stuff we have on that guy in their Discord, like there's no, and he is completely panicking now, by the way. Like I've got listeners that are in that Discord, and he is trying really hard to convince everyone it's not him. And to me, that's enough to get it to all stop, and just be like, all right, good. This guy's on the back foot. And that was my whole thing. Like people get scared when the swatting thing happens. And I'm like, yeah, there's a time to be scared. And I was angry. I was mad because my wife has never gone through anything like that before. Like I've been in broadcasting long enough. My life's been threatened. People have been threatening to do shit to me for over a decade, so whatever. But I'm used to it, but she's not. And to watch that really pissed me off. And I said, I'll give the cops what they need, and I won't talk about what they tell me not to talk about, but everything else, I'm gonna fucking bury this lady, and I'm gonna fucking bury this guy on the air. That they're the only ones. That whole community is the only one that actually got me emotionally involved. I despise her. I really, really hate her with a passion. And here's my thing. I don't expect anyone to share my hatred. It is a deeply personal hatred. It is deeply connected to what happened to my family and I and my friends and I. If other people, like I had Karl on, he's like, oh, I've had nothing but nice things about her. I was like, no. In no way do I expect you to jump in on this. This is
sure. Yeah. Because I know they're friends and yeah,
100% my fight. And, I would never tell anybody to jump on, and I would hope they would never tell me to not pursue it the way I want to. And, I not only despise the fact that she wants to build an audience on these, and I don't mean this as an insult, but these feeble-minded individuals. And
her audience is fucking nuts.
Yeah. And that IP2 community and everything else. And she wants to build a community around that, but she wants to be like Kevin Brennan said, you want to be the queen bee, but you don't want to take any responsibility for anything you've got the workers doing. And like that, I would hate that even if she never did anything to me. I would pick that out for mockery and ridicule and to laugh at her and make fun of her and point these things out. But the personal angle for me, that made it more of a like, oh, I'm gonna fight dirty on this one. Like I'm gonna get personal. This one I'm not. Like if you're gonna do that to me, I've always had a rule going back to radio. If you step on my toe, I'm wiping out the village. Like that's the way it has to be. So the next person who sees that goes, well, I'm gonna stay away from that guy. I'm not gonna fuck with him because I'm not willing to go through the things like because of what we've done and that appearance on Misery Loves Company. She quit doing her podcast. Like she's 100% doing IRL streaming now. And it was because of what Kevin and Bob and then our stuff, what that did. And now her Discord's fighting with each other. And I don't think she's long for any kind of relevance on the internet.
I mean, I was in that Discord too, and I was looking at some of those messages, and I gotta say I was also watching live when she was on MLC, and that was amazing. That was one of the most interesting streams I'd watched in a long time.
Right. And I was glad they did that. I was actually Bob Levy and I was kind of, kind of like when they talk about a president going behind the scenes and doing debate prep before a big debate. Like I was really honored that Bob called me and we like did Elisa Jordana prep together.
Really? Oh, that's great.
Yeah. He was like, send me everything you got. I sent him everything I had, screenshots, the whole deal. He told me what his strategy was for the interview. And I'm like, that sounds perfect. And he stuck to it. He's like, I'm going to be nice until she pushes my buttons. And she pushed his buttons, and then he fucking let her have it.
And she knows how to do that too. If you've watched her interview with John, I mean, it was hilarious. Have you seen the Elisa Jordana interview with Stuttering John?
No, I haven't.
You're probably not in the mood to watch it right now, but it was amazing. I actually covered it on my show. I tried to do the entire thing. I think I got about 2/3 of the way through, but I split it up into 2 episodes. And it was just so amazing because he just kept walking right into her thing where she just was trolling him so masterfully. Yeah, he just made such an asshole out of himself, but she knew what she was doing. Like, she knows how to manipulate people. She knows how to kind of set people up and then kind of do that. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Like, people who do that to people and who are that way, like, that is where I can definitely maybe relate to Kevin a little bit. I don't like the whole, like, the beefs getting angry and this and that and everything. He gets a lot of vitriol into it. But one thing that I definitely like, I see someone like Elisa, and I'm like, she thinks that she's like this hot shit. Like, I can run with the boys and be a bad bitch and this and that. And whenever I see that, I go, I bet I could make her cry. Like, that's the place I always go to. I'm like, you know what? I bet it's like, name that tune. Like, in 6 minutes or less, I could make her cry. I could make her cry or hang up on the video call. One of the two.
Yeah, man. Maybe we do need to get you guys to do a stream again. You probably never want to do it, right? I don't blame you. You would.
It would get bad. It would get bad. I like the stuff, the texts and stuff that I have that she won't disavow, that she won't ban people for. And the reason she won't ban them is she's terrified of these people. And I don't blame her. I mean, she has raised a den of psychopaths. She's a gardener being choked out by her own weeds, and she fucking deserves it.
That sounds like a hell of a marketing strategy, right?
Yeah, it's short-sighted. It's short-sighted.
Yeah.
She wants to be famous. She doesn't want to entertain people. She doesn't want to be a broadcaster. She doesn't want to do anything. She doesn't want to put in the things it takes to get out what she wants. She's a parasite. She just wants to take. She doesn't want to put in. And I don't respect her.
No, that's pretty well said. So you've got the feud thing going on online. Obviously, this has become more of a paradigm with a lot of these internetty shows, these podcasts, and the interaction between shows. And I'm asking you this question in general, not just about you, but where do you see these feuds eventually leading to? The Chad Zumock stuff, for instance. I feel like that's a good one.
The thing I like about Chad, I think he's an evergreen Lolcow. I don't think Chad's going anywhere. I don't think he's going anywhere. Good. I think he's too proud, and I hope he does well. You know, if Chad does well, we all do well with him. You know, I don't think he's going to do well. He's a comedian without a sense of humor or a desire to be funny. That's very strange to me. But he'll never quit, and I admire that about him. And, you know, we do a show that's 4.5 hours long. And for 4 hours, we'll talk about the news, we'll talk about pop culture, and at the end, for 30 minutes, like dessert, you know, we'll sit there and we'll make jokes about the news, we'll make jokes about pop culture, we'll make jokes about anything. And then in the last half hour, I'll go, all right, let's pick one of these motherfuckers today. Like, we probably have a cast of about 7 or 8 of them at this point. So every day we'll pick one, and for the last half hour, we'll bust on them for whatever they're doing. Chad is by far my favorite. Elisa will short-term be one of my favorites, only because it's so personal with me, and I love taking that part of my personality for a ride. It doesn't get to happen often. I'm a really happy guy now. So when I was on radio, I was really angry that, you know, we're number one in our market. They won't syndicate us. It's not growing anywhere. I felt stuck. Yeah. So there was a lot of vitriol and all that. And now I don't have any of that. So when it does get to come out, I like to take that monster for a ride every once in a while, because as taxing emotionally as it can be, unfortunately, I'm really good at it. And so, like, every once in a while when you get to take that beast for a walk where you're not only making fun of someone, but you really wish bad things for them, that, like, Chad, I don't wish any bad things for. Brendan, I hope he does very well. He's got a wife and kids. I hope he does really well and everybody does okay. Opie too. Those guys, I just see them and I go, oh, that's embarrassing. Let's make some jokes.
Yeah.
But
Opie,
like,
I feel sorry for. The one thing that really
don't feel sorry for a guy with $15 million or so in his pocket.
But I mean, he's somebody that entertained me. The Opie and Anthony show, I was late to appreciating it, but it changed my life. And Anthony and him, I mean, really more so, Anthony really opened up my eyes to a lot of shit and got me to, I think, look at the world a lot differently. But I think with Opie, the one thing that really pissed me off was when he was being the mask police and like yelling at people for not wearing masks on the street. When he was like super COVID guy, that's when I was like, okay, it really annoyed me. And I think I've had time to kind of forgive him for that, I guess.
I think that's your fault. You should have given up on him a long time before that. Like, to me, look, man, I always tried to defend Opie on Opie and Anthony because he was a radio guy and I was a radio guy. So I kind of understood what he contributed to the show. He always wanted to be seen as more than what he was. But like, as a radio guy, what he was really important. He was the guy who ran the board, picked the topics, had to decide when it was time to move on to something else. Because in the heyday of Opie and Anthony and Jimmy were fucking hilarious, but they could sometimes fall into that trap of let's make each other laugh. And sometimes that could drag something out too long. Opie knew when to go to the next thing, and those two would just keep being hilarious, and he'd keep it moving. But he wanted to be seen as one of the funny guys. And it's like, no, but you're not. But what you do is really crucial. It's really important to be that guy. And he betrayed his position, so to speak.
Yeah, insecurity.
Yeah, for sure.
I was going to ask you real quick, who the hell is Mindsceptre?
I don't know. I know that it's like a subreddit group. And when we were at like 1,000 subs, they kind of saw us as gettable, so to speak.
Right.
And that was kind of the first time we let anyone on YouTube know, like, if you pick a fight with us, we will just annoy the shit out of you until you go away. And we did. We read their stuff. We played their stuff and we're like, oh, this is terrible. And then we just be really obnoxious about them. I have not heard from those guys in months. I don't know if they're still doing stuff about Steel Toe. I have no idea. Like they kind of stayed down where they were. We grew and, welcomed these new communities and stuff to our show. And if they're still doing stuff, I don't know. We kind of just left them behind, so to speak. They're one of these guys that they wanted to troll and pick on a show, but they got emotionally invested, and that's where you fuck up. You can't, like I've been saying about all these Lolcows, you cannot get emotionally invested, and you cannot desire an outcome. Then you start to force those things. And I think that's what happened with those guys. They were like, we're going to end this. And it's like, well, why not just try to drive me nuts? Like, I find this with a lot of our Lolcows, and I'll put Mindsceptre in this group for a second. I find myself giving these motherfuckers advice on how to dick with me more than anything else. Like Chad, all of them. I'm like, guys, do this. Mindsceptre took it personally. And they were like, we're going to get this guy. We're going to talk about his hairline. It's like, well, we talk about my hairline. Guys, that's weak. That's not going to work. We're going to run him off the internet. It's like, but you're not. Don't do that. First of all, don't tell the person that, because then they see it coming. So, yeah, those guys, I don't know. They just seemed very minor league at that game. And I think their following kind of reflects it.
It seems like another one of those shows that they're trying to like, oh, we're going to expose Redbar. I think they did a Redbar expose.
Oh, did they do a Redbar thing?
I think they did. I think that's how I found out about them. That might have been how I found out about you, because they were talking about Redbar, then they were talking about you, and I was like, I didn't know who they were, but I forget exactly how you got on my radar. But
my thing about
the
Redbar,
algorithm.
Yeah, my thing about Redbar is this: funny show, important show. He's a talented guy. Just not my thing anymore. This Sven thing was really funny. I could not let that go. It was too funny, the stuff he was saying, but like, I just kind of grew out of it. That's nothing nefarious. I don't dislike Mike David. I hope he heals. I hope he gets better. I hope his show stays successful. Just not my thing anymore. That's
I mean, he looks like shit too, so he can't be doing well.
Yeah, he doesn't look good, but I hope that changes.
So I was going to ask you about another person, Jesse PS. Jesse PS is another personality. I really enjoy watching his content.
Yeah.
I mean, he's somebody, he should be in fucking Hollywood. Like, he should be a Hollywood producer. That kid's got some talent, whether you like him or not, whether you think he goes a little bit too far. I mean, he's definitely a character, but he's got a hell of a lot of talent. Why don't you think he's more popular than he is? I feel like he should be way more famous.
Because he starts shit with everybody. I mean, that's just the long and short. People get their feelings hurt. I've thought this about Jesse PS. I probably watched him. He came on my radar probably halfway into like Redbar's hiatus, I think. and he was doing stuff like he even does stuff on people I like Mersh has always been really cool to me. I like Mersh. I like Revenge.
I like Mersh too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like those guys, but like he does stuff on him and he's fucking relentless. And I get why Mersh does not like him. I get why he fucking hates the guy. I would too if I were him. But like his stuff on Alex Stein, I thought was really, really good. To me, when I first saw Jesse, I didn't get it, but I knew he was good at what he does, right? But then I started watching more stuff and I went, this guy's like a more concise, to the point Redbar.
Yes.
You know, Jesse says things in 5 minutes that it takes Mike an hour to say. And I think Jesse is immensely talented. I would not trust him for a second.
No, man.
And I mean that in the way that he wants me to think that. Like, I don't mean that as like, oh, fuck him, I don't trust him. I'm like, no. I'm going to appreciate that guy from afar. Like if he wanted, if he wanted to do something with me, I'd be like, look, dude, I wish you nothing but success. I hope you do really well. But like, I'm not going to walk into a situation where I might look like if anyone's going to make me look like a dipshit, it's going to be me. I will do that. I do that on a daily basis. I don't need to walk into something going, oh, shucks, me and Jesse are going to be pals. And then I look like a fucking idiot.
Did you see?
And he's capable of that.
Did you see when Andy Warski called in to Redbar and Redbar was it was the funniest fucking thing, and Redbar like completely played to his ego and was kind of like, this guy's cool. He's like, you know what? You're not like all the other guys. We actually really like you. And then Andy was like, yeah, cool. All right. You could tell he was getting confident. And then Redbar very slowly started going from like being his buddy to trolling him in real time. And Redbar, one of the things he did, he clipped on a fake man bun because, you know, Andy Warski, he had the man bun at the time. So Redbar's got the man bun and he's turning so you could see it. And it was like very slow. He realized like, oh, this guy's fucking trolling me. And at the end, and they played a video where it was Andy Warski with a buddy of his where they were chasing somebody. They had a gun that his friend like pulled a gun on somebody or something like that. So they were trying to expose him, but they pretended like they didn't know about it. And then you realize like, holy shit, they knew exactly what they were doing. But Andy got totally played by it. So it was he made him look so stupid. And then when Jesse went on Redbar, like Redbar completely just shut him down. And then did you ever see, I think I might have sent you the link, but when Jesse PS was on the kill stream with Ethan Ralph, the whole Dick Masterson text thing, that was like it was unfucking real. It was unbelievable. And I thought Dick handled it well.
I've got a lot of Jesse lore and all those guys from that kind of area lore that I'm not up on. I do remember the Redbar Jesse PS thing. And honestly, when I heard that, I did laugh, but I also think that Jesse kind of got treated unfairly. I think Redbar, he sees something in Jesse that he sees as threatening. And I think he was trying to cut that off at the quick. And I think that was part of it. I think that was kind of an ambush by Redbar. I think the Andy Warski thing is just really funny. And that kind of goes to what I was saying earlier about Redbar. Like, he's that guy in prison who's going to give you a candy bar, but now you don't understand. He gets to fuck you in the ass whenever he wants. So don't try to make him your friend. Right. Like, he's the guy in the prison yard that you got to go up to and just punch him as hard as you can in the mouth and hope that gains you respect. Because Redbar doesn't want friends. Redbar doesn't have friends. Redbar's not going to make, he finds making friends in the podcast world to be gay. And I don't, Andy Warski deserved that treatment because he tried to make Redbar his friend. It's stupid.
Well, if he likes people that don't like making friends with people, maybe him and Zumock would get along. Has he ever covered Chad before?
I feel like Redbar is the kind of guy who would see these guys getting ganged up on and just purposely take their side just to be the opposite guy.
I think he did that with Gino and with Kevin Brennan. He was kind of like, we like Kevin, or maybe it wasn't Gino. It was somebody that he's like, we like them. Louis J. Gomez too. He was kind of okay with Louis J. Gomez for a while.
I think they are still okay.
Yeah.
I think
I don't know. I thought he had turned on him or just
did
said,
he? Maybe
fuck him, I'm
might,
over
he
him.
might have.
He doesn't really talk about Mersh anymore, though. He said he, for the most part, wants to leave Mersh alone. Like, he doesn't.
Somebody told me he just talked shit about Mersh on like his last episode or two. I never got the Mersh hate because I was like, what does he do that makes you hate him so much? Like what? I don't see Mersh as a guy who's bothering anybody. Like if Teddy Hart hates Mersh, I get that. Like Mersh is actively gonna. If Jack Scalfani, the cooking guy, didn't like Mersh, I'd understand that. Mersh shits on
Sticks
him.
and Hammer 666.
Yeah, like
that whole thing. I mean, that was pretty fucking embarrassing.
Yeah, but there's all these people who like they like actively, like emotionally are involved in disliking Mersh. And I'm just like, what? First of all,
I like Mersh. I think Mersh is great, but it's
right. I've always enjoyed his programs, and he's always been nothing but nice to me. And I also, as I've said before, I don't believe in getting emotionally involved in like beefs with these people, unless of course they do something to me. But like, this is all for fun. Like, and like, if personalities aren't getting upset and angry and vitriolic with each other, then you certainly, as a fan of theirs, don't need to either. And I would tell my fans that too.
Yeah.
I would tell my fans, like, look, man, just laugh, have a good time with these people. That's why they call them lolcows. They don't call them rage cows. They're lolcows. We'll have a good time.
Well, Mersh ended up roasting me, and that actually helped my channel a lot. So this was back when I did the interview of that woman. I interviewed the lady that John blackmailed, Heather W. You've heard about Heather W. from WATP lore. So I interviewed her a couple years ago. That's when all the shit between me and John started. That's basically what started me doing the John content. But basically, what was I talking about? This fuck. I just lost my fucking train of thought.
You were telling everyone you were a homosexual.
He's a fag.
Oh. Fuck, I'm trying to think because there was a reason I was bringing this up.
Where did you learn your trade, you stupid fucking cunt, you idiot? Whoever told you that you could work with men?
Fuck. No, I had something
about Mersh. Something about Mersh. Yeah.
Thank you for getting me back on track. So anyway, so I had interviewed this lady that John had blackmailed, and then Mersh ended up covering it, and he was making fun of the lady. He was making fun of me, making fun of John. And at first I was kind of bummed out because I was a Revenge of the Cis fan. And the thing that really bummed me out is I'm like a Trump supporter. So I had all this Trump shit on my wall. And he was like, oh, Adam has the cognitive function of Joe Biden. He was like comparing me to Joe Biden. So I took that a little, like, I was a little bummed out, but I was like, this is kind of funny. Like a lot of it was really funny. I ended up clipping it and putting it on my channel, and it got some views, and it ended up getting me a lot of subscribers from it. So, I really do appreciate what Mersh did for me. Like he talked about my interview. He played it. He talked about it longer. Chrissy Mayer played it too, but he talked about it for way longer. So I definitely do appreciate that. And then I ended up responding. I did like a quick response video, and Mersh was like, oh, you were a good sport about it, whatever. You know what I mean? So I've been cool with him since then. But it's I could see, like, if you can't take a joke and then you get pissed and you overreact, then it's like you're just gonna make everything worse.
Yeah, then you're on the hook. I mean,
I could have became a lolcow,
Yeah. I mean, as long as you just remember what this is for, you should be fine.
I mean, we're really all trolls and we're all lolcows at the same time. Was it you who said that the other day?
Yeah.
Because that makes a lot of sense.
As long as you're talking into one of these, you're a lolcow. Like everybody is somebody's lolcow. Everyone is a douche or a gay or whatever to somebody.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I didn't have any other questions I wanted to ask you. So I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And it was great talking to you. And I love your show, man. You're fucking awesome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. All your coverage of all these people is really great. You get your ear to the ground. You work really hard. I know you're out there. You do shows like morning and night. And I know that that's really the key to, you know what I mean? You got to really grind it out. Same thing with Chrissy Mayer. It's good to see you guys succeed,
Yeah, no, it's fun. I mean, like I said, like the clips of shitting on people are kind of what we use to bring people in. And then they go, oh, these guys talk about everything. They're not just sitting there shitting on other shows. Like they're out there, they're talking about all of it, their lives, the news, the this, the that, and they're switching it up and keeping it moving. That's kind of the whole thing is like, I think people really still want that funny, comedic, for lack of a better word, shock jock morning radio show to be part of their routine every day. They just don't want to listen to the fucking radio because radio is completely neutered and killed all that shit. So we thought, well, we're just going to bring the kind of show we do to YouTube. Well, we brought it to Twitch first, which was a mistake. We fell behind so bad doing that. But since we brought it to YouTube, it's been like 1,000 extra subs every month. And, we just thought, just do we do the show we do. and enough people enjoy it where, you know, the word of mouth is spreading, and it's really cool. But yeah, if you see our clips and you go, oh, they just shit on podcasts, like that's what we do for the last half hour of every show, just because it's a lot of fun for me. But for the rest of the show, it's tap dancing, moving, and talking about everything.
Is there any way that people can get your premium content? Is there anything that you'd like to plug?
I mean, go to the YouTube channel, and if you click around, you like enough stuff, become a member. That's really cool. That's awesome. That helps us out a ton. But just subscribe, like this stuff. We always say, like, if you know, if you like it for a month or two, then become a member. But until then, figure out if you like it or not. We do a Patreon, but we only did a Patreon for our fans who didn't want to do like the bandwidth of watching us on YouTube, and they didn't want the battery suck or whatever. So they said, hey, is there any way you could just put up an audio only version? And it does take a lot of time to convert that. So we said, look, we'll do a $5 a month Patreon. And if you want that, do it. Otherwise, you know, and we put a bonus show up there every week, but it's like, mostly it's just for people who want to listen to the audio only. So again, a thing where if that's something you want, go for it. Otherwise, watch our show, like what we do, subscribe to our channel, follow on Twitter. That's really great.
Well, that's awesome. Well, hey, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'd love to have you back on sometime to talk about this stuff. It was really great talking to you, man. I appreciate it.
Sure, man. Thank you. You too.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Later.
All right. Later, man. Thanks again.